U.S. Senator Mazie Hirono has captured a lot of attention with her criticism of President Trump and of Supreme Court appointee Brett Kavanaugh. She wants voters to send her back to Washington. Challenging that effort is Republican Ron Curtis, a retired engineer who beat 7 competitors in the primary. On Maui, outgoing Mayor Alan Arakawa is trying to win back the county council seat he once held against Natalie Kama, who was the top vote-getter in the primary. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawai'i start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawai'i. I'm Laurie Amada. For those of you who have not voted yet, there's still time to hear from the candidates. We have 2 races for you tonight, starting with the candidates running for U.S. Senate. Democratic incumbent Mazie Hirono and her Republican challenger Ron Curtis. Now, after a quick change, we move to Maui for the Kahului seat on the County Council. Current Mayor Alan Arakawa and Natalie Kama were the top vote getters in the primary and are in a runoff for the general election. So we look forward to your participation as always in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawai'i Facebook page. As usual, we want to acknowledge our volunteers who'll be taking your questions tonight. Hello, PBS Hawai'i friends and family. Live shot of them eagerly awaiting your input. We love to hear from you, so please give them a call. All right, now to our guest for tonight's show. Running for U.S. Senate, Republican Ron Curtis is a retired systems engineer who moved to Kauai in 2009. His grandfather served aboard the USS Dobbin, which was moored at Pearl Harbor during the attack by Japan in 1941. He attended Halekula Elementary, where his father was stationed at Schofield Barracks. Democrat Mazie Hirono is the only immigrant in the U.S. Senate. She was born in Japan and moved to Honolulu with her mother and brother when she was 7. She earned a law degree at Georgetown, a psychology degree at the University of Hawaii, and was first elected to public office in 1980. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us.
Good to be here, Laura.
And we've got a relatively short amount of time, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of these questions here. And I'm going to start with you, Senator Hirono, because this has been in the media so much, national, local, a little bit of a long question for you, and definitely the last year and a half of the Trump administration. You've used the F word in national media interviews, you, Senator Hirono. And during confirmation hearings that we've seen and heard so much about for U.S. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, calling out men, quote, to shut up and step up, do the right thing for a change. Now, there have been letters to the editor for weeks about you, combined with much more attention, maybe possibly than you've ever gotten in a short amount of time. Is this the real Mazie Hirono? What's changed, if anything?
I've always been very determined and feisty. And as you know, I'm an immigrant. I came here, I didn't know any English or anything. And so, you know, you have to be pretty determined. I had a very determined mother who raised 3 children by herself. So I've always been very focused. I just haven't been as noisy about it or as out there. But this administration gives me many opportunities to be visible and vocal, because I so disagree with the administration's policies and priorities, whether it's separating children at the border, I mean, totally inhumane, or whether the constant mocking of people, whether they be Gold Star families or Dr. Ford. You know, the president mocks everyone who disagrees with them and goes after them, LGBTQ people, obviously immigrants. So I say, with all the things that are going on in this country, if you're not driven to swear once in a while, you're not paying attention. At the same time, I am very focused on what I need to do, and a lot of what I do is across the aisle. And in fact, this president has signed, you know, it's hard to get standalone bills into law to pass both the House and the Senate, but Amy Klobuchar and I hold the record for more standalone bills being enacted by the president than any Democrat in the House and the Senate. And all of these are bipartisan bills.
Well, we're definitely going to get to some of those specifics, but let's get to Mr. Curtis, an atmosphere you may potentially experience at some point in time. But let's talk about some of your priorities, in part what's on your website. The phrase prominently displayed, koa pona kina ole, which means courage and character to do the right thing. What do you mean by that? Why don't you give me an example, too?
To me, the partisan policy we've been seeing here in Washington, D.C. lately is just dividing the country, not bringing it together. And I'm a uniter, not a divider. So for me, it's the right thing is it's not the Democrat answer, it's not the Republican answer, it's the right answer. And it's not about fixing blame for the past, it's about taking responsibility for the future. And that's doing the right thing.
What might be an example?
An example is listening to the people of Hawaii. I went to neighborhood community meetings, and the issues that the people raised are the high cost of living here in Hawaii and the rapidly increasing health care. So I took that to heart, and that became the basis for my campaign. And I went and not just said I'm going to work on this, I did the research, analysis, and have proposed solutions out there on my website to deliver on both those promises to the people of Hawaii and this nation.
Larry, let me mention that one of the major issues of concern to everybody in our country is health care. And frankly, right now, with all of the attacks on the Affordable Care Act and the fact that the House of Representatives voted dozens of times to repeal the Affordable Care Act and just tossing millions of people out of the healthcare system, and we came very close in the U.S. Senate to do the same thing with that very dramatic vote where John McCain cast the deciding vote to save the Affordable Care Act. But even as we speak, there are 10 Republican attorneys general who have filed a major lawsuit in the Texas courts to do away with the Affordable Care Act and the protections for people with pre-existing conditions. So one of the issues that I've been totally focused on is the need to protect people with pre-existing conditions, which is one of 4 people in our country. That's millions of people.
No,
So actually,
that's
my
not
plan.
a particular opinion.
I do.
And plan.
I do. The Affordable Care Act is going to implode. It's just pricing. I actually stopped getting health care coverage because I have to drain my retirement account $16,000 before the insurance will pay a penny. So I bought accident insurance for $18 a month, and I take good care of my health in the front end, and I'm spending far less than $16,000 a year on my health. My health care plan does address some of Senator Hirono's concerns about making sure pre-existing conditions are covered. And it's based on a Health Care Act that was introduced in the Senate in 2007 and then again in 2009. And Senator Yonoya was a co-sponsor of that, but it was introduced by Senators Wyden and Senators Bennett. And they called it the Healthy Americans Act. And it was based on the Federal Employees Health Benefit Program, which is the best health care in the country. That's what the civil servants get. And what it does is it uses that health care coverage, it goes out to the private sector and changes the paradigm from employer-provided health care to employer-subsidized health care into this national health care system. And this immediately gives you the economy a scale of 140 million people, so you can accept all the pre-existing conditions because the cost impact is insignificant when it scales that large.
I think you've talked about in the media that there are aspects of the Affordable Care Act that you don't necessarily disagree with. It's the way that it was implemented in part that you have an issue with.
Correct. It's 2,300 pages, and it contradicts itself, and it just doesn't work. Now, on the same in the House, the American Health Care Act that was introduced by Paul Ryan and passed was junk. The Better Care Reconciliation Act within the Senate, which John McCain gave the thumbs down, was junk. But the plan I proposed forward was already deemed would be cost neutral or self-financing in the first year of implementation, and it covers every American and gives them affordable and accessible health care.
Your thoughts, Senator?
Well, I'm all for health care as a right, not a privilege. And the federal health care plan requires a lot of federal dollars going into helping to provide that kind of health care. And I don't know what the cost implications would be. That may have been one of the reasons that that law did not go very far. But there's no question that the Affordable Care Act really enable over 25 million more people to get health care, because before the Affordable Care Act, people with pre-existing conditions, that would be women, that was a pre-existing condition. If you had a baby, that was a pre-existing condition, and the insurance companies either could decline to cover you at all, or they could charge you a lot more. So the Affordable Care Act is not perfect. But you know what? When the Republicans start talking about we have a better plan, they have not come up with a better plan. All they've done is try to repeal an act that has helped millions of people. But at the same time, one of the reasons that the Affordable Care Act is going through some tough times is that there's basically is being a subterfuge by eliminating some of the cost-sharing aspects of the plan. And believe me, the Trump administration has said that we're going to do everything we can to make the Affordable Care Act unworkable.
I'm going to give you a little bit more of a chance to respond, because we're going to expand on talking about healthcare a little bit. And then feel free to add your comments too, because this is still within the same vein. But I just wanted to make sure I added this question as well, having also to do within the vein of healthcare as well as entitlement programs. Senator Mitch McConnell saying that there's time to look at reforming entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and blaming that on increasing the national debt. So what are your thoughts in regards to that? And feel free to also respond.
Sure.
Okay, I'll start with that. My plan goes farther than the Healthy Americans Act in that I also rolled in Medicare and the Veterans Health Administration into this plan. The Federal Employees Health Benefit Program operates at 1/10 the cost of Medicare. So if I rolled Medicare, kept the funding source where it is, and rolled it into this national health care system, I could improve the quality of care and lower the cost of Medicare at the same time.
So you agree in part with what Senator Mitch McConnell is?
Well, I don't call it an entitlement program. People have been paying into this system. The payroll taxes are covering those taxes, so I don't call it an entitlement program. I do not. It is a financial problem, but it's not an entitlement. People are paying into this. But to go back to what Senator Hirono has talked about, the cost of that federal employees health benefit, the government does pay their portion for the people in the government to get that care. The paradigm shift that I've mentioned about the private sector subsidizing the health care into this plan, they're now paying that portion that they currently pay directly, but they're now paying into this national health care system. And the reason that system operates at 1/10 the cost that Medicare does is because it's a managed competition of over 200 private insurance providers. So the competition drives excellence. To get your dollars, they have to provide the best value of service for dollar. And just one last thing on that, this plan didn't go through because President Obama at the time didn't think the private sector would buy into that idea. And the other benefit of that idea is that your insurance now becomes portable. If you go from one company to another and had a condition, it's no longer a pre-existing condition because your insurance moves with you because the plan's the same. It's just a different employer subsidizing that policy. So that was the big selling point from Senator Wyden and Senator Bennett about the
yes,
portability.
both of whom are very strong supporters of the Affordable Care Act, by the way. And the reason that Mitch McConnell is saying that he wants to get to what he calls entitlement reform, but what I call earned benefits, because these are programs, Medicare, Social Security, that people have paid into, and so I consider them earned benefits. And the reason that he wants to cut Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid is because of the huge budget deficit that was created by the $1.5 trillion tax breaks that went to the richest people and corporations in our country. Now, I know that the Republicans really have always wanted to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, as a matter of fact. These are huge programs that millions and millions of people in our country rely upon. I know for a fact that if you start talking about cutting Medicare and Social Security in Hawaii, there will be a huge hue and cry because there are so many hundreds of thousands of people here. So he's using the costs of Medicare and Medicaid as an excuse to pay for this totally unwarranted giveaway to the richest people and corporations in our country.
I know we could easily take up this entire half an hour talking about health care, and I'm going to let you respond.
I'll jump in. Okay.
And feel free, just tag on to this. I just want to make sure I get to the viewer question, and feel free to add your comments as well. This is from Anne. She says, do you support a single-payer medical plan as proposed by Bernie Sanders? If you want to answer that, and feel free to respond as well.
No. The Medicare for All would cost $32 trillion by all sources and just will not work. It is a talking point for a re-election. It is not a plan. Senator Schott's idea of Medicaid for all would be a better plan, but it still wouldn't work. He still couldn't cover the costs. And I want to jump back to something I asked Senator Hirono. Where do you get your number of the $1.5 million tax cuts? Because the total...
It's $1.5 trillion.
Trillion,
tax cuts.
The total for 2018, the total income taxes were only $1.6 trillion.
It's been reported everywhere that this
Okay,
is a $1.5 trillion
that's what I don't-
tax cut, and it blew a hole in our budget as well as
I'm just asking where that number is coming from,
debt.
because the total income tax from income tax is only 1.6 trillion. You have another set from payroll taxes, and then you have other few things, and the total income tax the government had coming in, or total tax the government had coming in, was 3.3 trillion. And even after the tax cuts in December, this year's taxes, the income tax, was higher by $100 billion.
There is no question that the huge tax cuts for the richest people in our country and corporations has blown a huge hole in our deficit, and it's added to our debt. And it is the reason that Mitch McConnell is saying, well, somebody has to pay for this. And the somebody will be all those people who are on Medicare, Medicaid. The president has already proposed a $1.5 trillion cut in Medicaid, which a lot of seniors in our country depend on for long-term care. It is also the program that supports opioid programs. And so this is what's happening. And now healthcare is such a huge concern for everybody that the Republicans are talking about, they're the ones that wants to save healthcare for everybody, when they have been spending the last many years after the Affordable Care Act was passed to undo and repeal the Affordable Care Act without anything to take its place except basically junk plans.
I'm going to have to move on, because we just got a whole bunch of viewer questions, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to all of ours, but I do want to get to them. So this is from Tim from Honolulu. With an estimated 25,000 to 40,000 illegal aliens in Hawaii, would you be in favor of having them removed from our state? This is from Tim.
We need to have comprehensive immigration reform in our country. And when I was first elected to the U.S. Senate, there was agreement, a bipartisan agreement on the part of Democrats and Republicans that our immigration system was broken, and that there are over 11 million undocumented people in our country. Many of them, by the way, are paying taxes, and they will get no benefits for it. So we need comprehensive immigration reform that will provide a path to citizenship and allow them to come out of the shadows and to be able to live their lives, and then they will have to stand in line. That was the immigration reform bill that was passed in a bipartisan way in the Senate.
And I know one of your platforms also is taking a different look at immigration as well.
I have it on my...
Do you, by the way, do you support building a wall along the border in Mexico?
Where it makes sense. I mean, some places you can't build a wall. I go farther. We need to secure our coastlines as well. I know for a fact that friends I have down in Florida, where there's illegal stuff coming across the coastline, no wall's going to stop that. So we need to step up border security.
Needs-based immigration.
That's my needs-based. I'm favor across government more dynamic legislation. Needs-based immigration is one of my policies, based on two things. We know what unemployment is, and when our high school students are going to go looking for their careers, we know where the needs are in the market. So my needs-based immigration is when unemployment is low, bring in more immigrants, and make it more like an application process, for we know the jobs are where we need the people, so those are the skill sets we're looking for.
So it'll flex.
It'll flex. And the idea is, too, is we know where the needs for the jobs are, so those are the skill sets we should be bringing in. It's a win-win. The immigrants are coming in.
Your thoughts, Senator Hirono, on a needs-based?
Immigration is a very complicated issue, both on the legal side and on the undocumented side. And so there was a lot of effort put into the comprehensive immigration bill that emerged out of the Senate when I first got elected, and so that was in 2013, and it was very much a bipartisan effort. There were Republicans and Democrats who got together and basically did the foundational document, and it really was based on, I would say, but the determined need was that we wanted more people with STEM backgrounds, STEM education and all of that, and I said, wait a minute, we need all kinds of people to come to our country. And so I worked with Senator Graham to propose and get his support in an amendment that would allow people in the healthcare, with healthcare backgrounds, for example, because there's a huge need with our aging population for healthcare workers. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have a lot of the skilled kind of people to provide healthcare for our aging population. So it is very difficult. It is very complicated. And so we should get started on comprehensive immigration reform, and I certainly would be open to what I would consider a fair way to approach the 11 million undocumented people here who are living in the shadows in fear of deportation, who, many of them, are paying taxes.
Mr. Curtis, let's talk about your position as a Republican. You call yourself a moderate Republican. How would you define that, and how does that position you aligned with Republican leaders, Mitch McConnell, President Trump? How would you describe that?
I'm a statistical moderate. I'm very fiscally conservative. I believe that the smaller, more efficient government is the most effective government. Government's grown to the point that it's too big, that it's inept and wasteful because it can't be adequately overseen or managed. So my other side, I'm socially progressive. My father, when he grew up, his father died when he was in high school, and he and his 4 brothers all enlisted in the armed services because they didn't have anything. So my brother, my sister, and I, when we were growing up, he made sure we had the tools to succeed if we chose to succeed based on our ambition, abilities, and vision. And I'm more socially progressive in that I'm a reformer and a innovator, but I stopped short of being a liberal because I still value and advocate for traditional and cultural values. So from that standpoint, I would like to see domestic programs to provide people the tools to succeed if they choose to succeed, but not going too far to the extent to making them permanently and inescapably dependent on government.
I'm going to have to jump around a little bit here because I want to get to some of these viewer questions.
Let me just say that the height of fiscal irresponsibility is the 1.5 trillion tax cuts that benefited the richest people in our country and the corporations, and that did not trickle down. And this is why the President Trump is now talking about doing a middle-class tax cut, which we can't do because, for one thing, we're not even in session. But to me, that is an admission that this huge tax cut, which blew a hole in our budget, by the way, isn't working. That's why they're not talking about it.
This is from Carolina, by the way, for you, Mr. Curtis. If you were in Congress last year when Republicans voted to give a big tax cut to corporations, how would you have voted on that?
I would have voted yes. Based on CNBC, 87% of the income taxes are paid by the top 20% of the earners. So of course, if you have a tax cut, they're going to be the biggest recipient because they're paying most of the taxes. The top 1% of the earners pays 43% of the taxes, and the top 0.1% still pays 27% of the income taxes. So any tax cut is definitely going to benefit the rich more than it's going to benefit the poor. I still combat the $1.5 trillion number. I don't think that number is true. The entire income tax collected this year for 2018 is only $1.66 trillion. So if they cut it down to 1.5 trillion, that's got to be over time or somewhere. I don't know.
Well, it is. Of course, it is over time, and that is why there's a huge hole that was blown because this huge tax cut was not paid for. It was not paid for. So there's a height of total fiscal irresponsibility to grant this kind of tax break to the richest people without paying for it. And now Mitch McConnell is saying, here's how we're going to pay for it. We're going to make major cuts to Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. The president has already proposed a 1.5 trillion cut to Medicaid, and that's going to hurt
this is a
lot of people.
Actually, I didn't answer the corporate part of that. The corporate part of that was they lowered the corporate tax from 35% down to 21%. And since they've done that, people are bringing their work back into this country that they've really taken out to places like Ireland where it's only 20%.
I know
so they're bringing
we can
that
carry
back
on
in.
with some of these questions, but I need to get
One
to
last
some of the
statement.
ones.
One last
I need
statement.
to get to this. So this is from Dee in Honolulu. Senator Hirono, this one's for you. Why did you not criticize President Obama for giving billions to Iraq, yet you attack POTUS?
I'm sorry, billions to Iraq?
Criticizing President Obama.
This was a war that was, I totally didn't support it. It was President Bush who attacked Iraq and led to the rise of Iran and all of the attendant problems. So giving, we went in there and attacked Iraq. We're in the Middle East, we're in Iraq, we're in Afghanistan. Well, I don't even know where that number comes from, but there's no question that our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have cost our country billions of dollars. And right now, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight for what's going on there. And I sit on Armed Services Committee, and we ask, where is the, what is the strategy here? What does winning in Afghanistan look like? And I can tell you the generals come in and they would try to, say this, that, and the other thing, but it is very difficult. Now, right now, what we're looking at is what the competition from what we call the near peer competitors. That would be Russia and China. China is enhancing its capability to become, I would say, the world economic and military power. And so that's where we need to be focusing a lot of our attention.
I want to make sure that Mr. Curtis gets a word in. I'm talking about trade and working with China. Tariffs, are they the answer? Why are we not? Why are not?
I could say the president does a lot of things when he initially starts it. I do not see the end game, but his tariffs, we now gotten rid of NAFTA. We have USMCA, that worked. China's going to have some serious problems coming up in several months.
A lot of people saying that that was another version of NAFTA.
It is, but it was more fair, and that's what he's driving for, fair trade. Under previous administrations, the policies with the global were all globalism, and the U.S. was actually funding a lot of these globalist efforts at the expense to citizens here in the United States. So the president's stance of America first is, to me, sort of like when you're on an airplane and an oxygen mask comes down and they tell you, put your own oxygen mask on first before helping everyone else. It's simply that strategy. It's not globalism. It's just make sure you take care of America first.
The president's foreign policy is really what I would call fly by the seat of your pants kind of policy. So as he embraces Putin and the dictators, he says that Kim Jong-un is a really nice guy now. But his foreign policy, he does not consult with anybody. Even his generals don't know about his foreign policy and his trade policy. You have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce saying, don't do it. Don't impose these kinds of tariffs. So if he's going to engage in trade wars, there should be a lot more discussion and a lot more collaboration, a lot more transparency to what he's doing, because what this president often does is he makes these decisions. And you never know if he's going to stick to these decisions, and there's not a lot of consideration given to the possible impacts.
I want to try and squeeze in a couple more questions here. We don't have a lot of time left, only a couple of minutes. Mr. Curtis, on your website, you mentioned the lack of diversity in Congress, not in terms of ethnicity, though, but in terms of professions, with most politicians being attorneys. Why is that a problem? Explain that.
Like I said, on the website, 55 senators have law degrees, 167 House members have law degrees, and there are only 3 scientists and 8 engineers in all of Congress. Those are the skill sets that are the most likely to be thinking outside the box to drive innovation and change in our existing processes.
Your thoughts, Senator Hirono?
We need a lot more diversity, but generally when we think about diversity, we're talking about diversity in terms of our backgrounds, in terms of our race. We don't have a lot of minorities serving in the U.S. House or the Senate, and for a long time I was the first Asian woman to get elected to the U.S. Senate. So the kind of diversity that we bring through our own life experiences as an immigrant, I'm the only immigrant serving in the U.S. Senate at a time when immigration is a huge issue, that kind of diversity is very necessary. We need a lot more women with our diversity. So it's not the professions
different
as
slices
such.
as diversity necessary. But let me move to one more question before you get to it, because we've only got about a minute left now. Okay. This is an important one, I think. So you got about 30 seconds each. The atmosphere in Washington described by many as toxic. Okay. How do you bring civility back? Is that possible? How do you want to approach it?
It's walk the walk. I've already talked to some people across the aisle in D.C. They've read my website. They like what I've done. They said, Ron, we will support your agenda if you help us solve our problem. And I said, done. They're not giving me my vote for their vote. They've actually want my services as a systems engineer to help them solve their problem. And that's where I get back to the diversity of skill sets. We need the diversity. I like the diversity of population, ethnicity and stuff, but you need the diversity of skill sets. If all you have is construction workers in Congress, you're not going to get a whole lot of good stuff done. You need a diversity of those skill sets.
Senator Hirono.
So one of the reasons that I have several bills to encourage STEM experiences for women and minorities is so that we can have people who are engineers, people who have those kinds of experiences. But you know what? These areas are very much underrepresented by both women and minorities. So this is not going to change overnight or because we think it would be a good thing. You have to have legislations that encourage this kind of thing. Just as, you know what, one of the changes that's going to happen this time, I hope, is there are more women running for office than ever, and that's going to make a difference. I know so from sitting on the Senate Armed Services Committee where we focused on sexual assault in the military.
I wish we could have gotten to all the questions we had here, but thank you both of you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time greatly, and we thank our guests, of course, Ron Curtis and Senator Mazie Hirono. All right, now we're going to do a quick change, and we'll return in a few minutes to hear from the 2 candidates running for the Maui County Council Kahului seat. Please enjoy this Hiki no story from Maui High School. We'll be right back.
Maui High School junior varsity cheerleader Chantel Sandoval spends her weekends spreading cheer. But what makes this extraordinary is the fact that Chantel is legally deaf. Here is Chantel speaking through an interpreter.
I was just born that way. When my mother gave birth to me, she almost died. And then, I don't know, I became deaf.
Her deafness, however, has not denied her from pursuing her dream of cheering in front of a crowd.
Cheering was something I always wondered about, and I just wanted to know if I could make the team.
However, Chantel's journey to becoming a cheerleader for her school was not an easy one, even with the help of sign language interpreters who helped facilitate communication between Chantel and her coach.
Because anybody else I can yell, point your toes, lift your shoulders, keep your head up, anything like that. But if I try to yell at her to do those things, she doesn't understand, or she doesn't hear me. So that's the biggest thing, is just trying to get her to really understand what I'm saying.
As of recently, hearing her teammates and coaches just became easier, thanks to the help of a cochlear implant, a surgically implanted medical device that provides a sense of sound to a person who is deaf or severely hard of hearing.
Before I got my cochlear, I could still speak for myself, and I used hearing aids, but still, it was still hard for me, and I would miss a lot of the information. And many people would talk and probably speak behind me, and I could understand that. Since I've got cochlear, I can understand them a little bit more, and my hearing is improving.
While cochlear has made cheering an easier task for Chantel, the negative stigma surrounding deaf people still remains.
Many people feel very awkward, and they avoid deaf people, and they don't offer help like in a store. They tend to just ignore you. I feel really hurt. I feel like insulted. And just because I'm deaf, it doesn't mean that I'm ignorant.
Though Chantel has to navigate around these obstacles, she embraces the fact that she is deaf.
No, deaf people can do anything. It doesn't matter if they can't hear. Just like hearing people, what if they couldn't walk? Or if they couldn't, does that mean they can't do anything? No, they can do anything with a wheelchair. It's the same thing for deaf people. We can't hear, but we can do anything we want.
But Chantel wants to make one thing clear. Do not call her impaired.
Well, I don't like the word impaired. It means something's broken. And I'm not broken, I'm only deaf, and I was born that way. Don't call me hearing impaired, call me deaf.
Chantel Sandoval is living proof that a communication challenge does not have to keep anyone off the sidelines. She plans to continue to spread the Sabre spirit as loud as she can. This is Sydney Green from Maui High School for Hiki No.
Aloha and welcome back. For this next half hour, we're featuring the two nonpartisan candidates in the runoff for the Kahului seat on the Maui County Council. They were the two top vote getters in the primary. So please continue to email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawai'i Facebook page. Our volunteers, there they are, still here. Keep them busy. We can see you are. Good job. We love hearing from all of you. So let's move right on to our candidates for Maui County Council. Alan Arakawa is finishing his third term as Maui County Mayor. He has a business degree from UH Manoa, started his career as a wastewater plant worker for Maui County, and has two grown daughters. Natalie Kama is a community activist with 11 children, 30 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. She is currently working with a nonprofit to address affordable housing and immigration issues. So thank you, both of you, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Having you here.
Just a little correction. Started my county employment.
County employment.
Before that, I had a printing company, a graphics company.
My goodness.
I had real estate and life insurance. And,
many hats.
And a farm. So.
You've covered them all. All right, so you're familiar with a lot of different issues and a lot of different areas that people can work in. So let's talk about on a grander scale. What do you see as the biggest issue facing Maui County right now, and what might you do to propose to fix it? Let's start with you, Natalie.
I think we both know that the greatest issue facing Maui County is our housing crises, that we have the price of housing that is out of reach of many of our people, and we have the lack of affordable housing units that some of our people are not able to move into. So right in the crux, that's what it is, it's housing.
Your thoughts, Mayor?
We're on a catch-up for housing. We're actually in the pipeline right now. We have over 4,200 houses being built.
Do you also consider that the biggest issue?
It's a big issue. It's a big issue because the council passed some years ago an affordable housing bill and a Show Me the Water bill. In essence, it became a moratorium that for 7 years, virtually no houses were built in this category. And we're on a catch-up right now. Prior to that, we were pretty much even with demand. Since then, we're now trying to be able to rebuild the industry. And that big gap left us about 12 to 13,000 homes short. So because of that, that was passed, it drove the price of houses from about $250,000 to over close to $700,000 per medium income housing now. That's what the real problem is. It's not creating houses, it's trying to bring the price of housing down to where people can actually afford it. There's methods to do it, and we're working on methods to be able to do it.
Well, what are some of the methods? Give us some examples.
One thing is, in our planning process, we need to make sure that all of the new construction happens within planned areas, where we can put in the water, the sewer, all the infrastructure, and it's close to where the infrastructure is. The zoning of those properties all need to come under the county so that we can take agricultural land, zone it for housing.
This sounds like a process.
It's a process.
That could take some time.
It's a process that could be done very quickly, or it could take a long time. The council has the ability to create zoning changes in and of itself, and we've done it many times when I was on the council. So if we take properties that close to infrastructure, existing infrastructure, we rezone that property and we keep it in the county inventory for affordable, we can manage it.
I want to let Natalie get a word in here on proposals to fix the problem. What might be some of the solutions for you?
I think some of the solutions is the political will to do it, to get it done. So Alan just said that there's ways, and he has said this is how it can be done. Then why hasn't it been done?
So
That's
what
my
would
question.
you do?
Well, I think the problem when I look at it is it's the way the council works with the mayor. My understanding is your council are your policymakers and your mayor is the implementer of those policies. And when those two work hand in hand, they say this is what you need to do, then you go do it. And I think there hasn't been that kind of a gelling with the current council and with our mayor so that they end up in some of these squabbles that Alan has talked about, on the campaign trail of the dysfunctionalism of certain council members with him. And it's like, then for us, then you got to kind of like move everybody out of the way, get a whole bunch of new people in, and let's do it.
So how would you make a difference in that regard?
I think I can make a difference because I work really well with other people. I like to bring people together to look for solutions. I myself don't always have the solutions, so I would look to others who I know would have those solutions, work with them. We have many experts on Maui that know and understand housing, how it's done, how it should be done, and how it can be done. And there are certain developers on Maui that have done these projects. So I would go to these people and say, hey, this is what we need to do. Let's work and get it done.
Mayor, do you think that's part of the problem, the politics and the dynamics
I think
within the
you're
council?
overlooking the fact that there's a period of 7 years that there were no housing done. I think she's also overlooking the fact that we've got over 4,200 units in the works right now, projects being built. Those developers she's talking about, those people that are actually in construction, we're working with them to build the houses. Now, the big change occurred just a few years back where the council went from a 50% requirement for affordable housing down to 25. After that, the bankers, the people that were financing these houses were willing to come to the table. And since then, we've been working with the development industry to create the ability to have those. And I can go through a whole list of projects, but it comes out to a little over 4,200. 61% of those are in the affordable category. The challenge is not building the houses anymore. The challenge is how do we lower the cost so that the average person can make a living and earn the money to make a mortgage.
Let's talk about another area of housing or impacting housing, vacation rentals, or what many consider illegal vacation rentals. What is your position on the proposed charter amendment to increase that fine for illegal vacation rentals to $20,000 from the current $1,000 plus, I think, $10,000 per day right after the violation persists?
It was one of my suggestions. So the administration made that proposal to raise the fines because too many people are just ignoring the fines that we have right now because they're too small. When people can charge $1,000 a night, or they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of vacation rentals illegally, they don't care about a small fine. So a $20,000 will give them a little bit of bite, and it's every day after that until they make the correction.
What are your thoughts, Natalie? Do you?
I think I can see the reasoning behind raising the fines because he's correct that it's so much easier to pay off the fine because it's like a slap on the wrist, but then if you increase it, then maybe that might not be so. But I also think that we have to enforce the illegal rentals. I think that's our problem. We're not enforcing that. And we should be enforcing that so that we don't have to be slapping people on the wrist, or so that we don't have to be punishing them for doing something wrong. I mean, everybody does wrong stuff, but to actually punish a certain segment of our community for trying to create a business or trying to make a living or whatever it is they're doing, I don't think that we have to be punished. It's like the hotels that we went ahead and taxed them less than we taxed the timeshare guys. I mean, do we do that because we want to punish them, or do we do that because that's something that we have to do?
That is a pretty strong argument that.
Well, let me give you a little bit of a background.
It's not so much the dollar amount of the fine; it's that people don't believe they're going to get fined or they're going to get.
No, let's look at the history of this, because when I was on the council, we started working on bringing laws that you can actually enforce and you can identify vacation rentals. So people now have to register as a vacation rental and they go through a process. It took time to create that. Before that, there were no rules and there was no ability to monitor. Since then, we are actually trying to be able to monitor that better. And every year the council comes up with a different scheme. Currently, we've hired a company to actually go through all of the listings that are on the internet to be able to identify all the illegal vacation rentals. Now, every vacation rental that we catch that is illegal is being stopped. They are being prohibited from being able to become a vacation rental for a number of years. That action is ongoing right now, and we have to be able to take each one of those and be able to take them to court. So it takes time to be able to process everything. You can't do it all overnight.
A lot of different counties concerned about this, no doubt. I want to move on.
But that's a process.
And part of this is because of this, because of what's happening with illegal vacation rentals, is because, in part, because of the growth of tourism. So Maui County managing tourism growth. Do you think there could be too much tourism? How do you think that should be managed? Maybe I'll start with you, Ms. Kama.
I think the way to manage tourism is to be able to get within the county a tourism cabinet or department or something, so that you can take a really good look at the tourism and how it's impacting our people and how it can be better managed, because we can't say we're going to manage it. What are we talking about? What kind of data, what kind of statistics do we know about? Do we know enough about it to be able to manage it? We don't. So we might even have to create that. For me, we would have to probably create a department or a sub-department within the county to be able to take a look at that, because tourism is our golden egg, and we really need to be able to do something that's going to be honorable to our people as well as to the people.
So you don't believe in a cap of any kind or any type of effort to I don't know what's the right word, not suppress tourism. I don't think that's quite the right word.
To stop growth?
Yeah, limit. That's a better word. Thank you, producer. Yes. Your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, you have to understand, first of all, the lack of affordable housing is what's creating this panic about vacation rentals. Okay? If we had the affordable housing built, and again, because of this gap where we had virtually a moratorium on building houses, this created a big shortage. Vacation rentals and the hotel industry have been limited on Maui very deliberately. When I was on the council and as administration, we've tried to maintain the hotel industry in the Wailea area and the Kapalua Lahaina area. So we've specified which is the tourism area. We have carrying capacity studies, and we limit the amount of activities on the beaches. We are able to manage what it is. The problem comes about in that there are many people that are trying to be able to convert or cheat on the system. And those cheaters on the system are the ones we're trying to catch now, and we're trying to identify and put a stop to.
Did you want to comment, Ms. Kama?
Well, no, I just was listening because I think people are people. They have to make a living. I mean, so when you call people cheaters, it's like, I think because we are all trying to make it work for our families. And sometimes we end up doing things, or we end up being criminals or being called criminals because of the way we figure the solution for us is. It's like the homeless issue. We criminalize them because they don't have a place to live. We criminalize the undocumented and the people crossing our borders because they don't have this. I mean, we have to look at our people as being people first and then take care of them as people first. And then,
I'm going to take offense at that, because the reality is, when we were creating the laws, we gave people an amnesty period to be able to legalize. We told everyone in the industry, and this is the vacation rental industry was involved in this process. Once we created the rules, then we expect everybody to follow, and we gave them a time period to be able to make the sign-ups and to be able to actually become legal. Those that chose not to are the ones that we're going after. We gave them the opportunity to become legal. There is a mechanism by which they can become legal if they want to be able to sign up for it. There's a process that's created now. So no, we're not trying to criminalize people and stop them from making a living. We're trying to get them to do it the right way, in the right process.
I'm going to have to move on to get to some of the other questions here. Here's another one for you. Maui County, only county that has not added a surcharge to the excise tax. Do you support this? Why or why not?
I do not. I think that our people are taxed enough, and unless you understand how difficult it is for people to make ends meet day to day, week to week, month to month, a surcharge for some people is just too much. And I just think that what they're doing right now is sufficient for them.
Well, we're going to disagree on this issue, because it really depends on how you spend the money. Now, by doing the 0.5%, this is targeted toward highway improvements and in the highway department. The county also puts money into highway improvements. So if we do this tax, we can reduce the amount of money that the county puts in from our general fund into highway improvements and put it into other areas. Or we can reduce the property taxes by that much. The general excise tax is also paid for by the tourists, and it broadens out the basis. So because we have only one major source of taxing right now, which is property tax, the general excise tax would give us a second tax by which we could really balance off our budget. But again, every year the council balances the budget so that the expenditures and the income matches. It's not going to add extra money that's just going to be flagrantly put away. We balance it off. So by adding this area, we have to take away from another area. We're required by county law to balance the budget, and that's what we do.
Let's talk about Ohana safe zones. We talked about the homeless population and dealing with housing. How do you feel about Ohana safe zones?
Let me go first. We're actually trying to create some safe zones, and we've made proposals to the county council to create safe zones. Now, the governor and the rest of the state, for that matter, all the other 3 counties, have actually utilized the amnesty period that the governor put up, whereby we could get away from a lot of the zoning ordinances and the rules and regulations, and they've created these safe areas. Our council is the only one that really has not adopted any of it. We've made proposals for places in Lahaina. We've made proposals working with the nonprofit agencies.
And that was very much one of the difficulties on Oahu, was where those safe zones would be,
Right.
And whether or not there was enough community feedback.
Unlike Oahu, we have a lot of open areas where we actually can put safe zones where they're not going to interfere with the public very much. In Lahaina, above the Aquatic Center, where we have our homeless shelter, that area could have been expanded to be able to include this area.
Your thought? I want to make
okay.
sure I get to her.
There's just plenty.
No,
So,
I would have to, at least we agree on a couple of things too, is that I am in support of Ohana, of safe zones, but I also think safe zones don't necessarily have to be a place where you put people. I think we look at parking lots because we have a lot of homeless who live in their cars and all they want sometimes at night is find a safe place to park. We have, and so I would like to see that kind of stuff happen. And it doesn't have, and it could be at some church parking lot or some parking lot that would be safe for a whole bunch of them to park at night, and in the morning they all go back to work wherever they come from. But I also think that sometimes adding things like a hygiene, what do you call that? Those little
What she's talking about is being able to bring in trailerable showers,
with showers and toilets
facilities.
and laundry.
This is what we propose to the council
that kind of
as
stuff.
well.
Those are the things that I think, and they're mobile.
So an agreement in this area.
Yes.
Similar thoughts on this. Let's talk about what you see as urgent as far as bills you would propose when elected. What might be the first, or one of the first bills you would propose if you were elected to the county council?
I think the first bill I would like to propose would be a partnership between the county, the state of Hawaii, and the Department of Hawaiian Homelands to be able to create that partnership to be able to put housing on Hawaiian homelands, where the county would be the lessee, similar to how in the Kapolei, the shopping center is a lessee. Kinkamema Shopping Center is a lessee with the department, and not a lessee, but a licensee, and that we could create those kinds of partnerships to be able to put housing on Hawaiian homelands. That would be one of the first things I'd like to do.
Well, it's one of the things we're already doing. We've been working with Hawaiian Homes to create housing. So at Leali, we're creating housing now. There's another phase coming up. Waiukoa, we've created housing working with Hawaiian Homes. Kula, we've created housing. So we're working with them already. The challenge is we have to be able to create housing where there's infrastructure.
So if you were wearing a different hat as a county council member, how would you approach it? And what would be your priority from wearing that hat?
From a county council perspective, we would change the planning process to allow the infrastructure to be built. The county would purchase property and develop out the lots. We would then contract it out to whoever wants to work on it to actually build the houses and to run the rental programs. Now, we work with Halema'olu in doing rentals and in managing rentals. It's something that's already existing program. So I would expand that program to be able to allow much more rental. And if we construct the housing next to infrastructure, it becomes much less costly.
I do want to get to we got a few minutes left, so I want to get to one of these questions. Maui resident would like to know why the council sided with Monsanto when the people were against them. So maybe your perspective on that, and as a council member, how you feel you would stand in that position.
Well, we didn't side with Monsanto. The question was on GMOs. Mm-hmm. We told them from the very beginning the law that they were trying to pass was very flawed. It was not with the concept of not doing GMOs or not. It was the way that their lawyers phrased everything would not pass muster. Mm-hmm. They did not check with our lawyers on the format for it. And indeed, what happened was the high courts ruled it all illegal and improper. That was the problem. Okay. Now, I've had those people come in and I've told them if they want to do GMO-free areas, we can create GMO-free areas. But they wanted to pass this law that was over-encompassing that didn't pass muster in the court as far as how it was phrased and how it was worded. It was impossible to enact.
I want to make sure you get a word in.
My understanding is that it was a ballot initiative. Citizens from the community got together, put it on the ballot, and the people of the county passed that ballot. So if it was flawed in any way, legally, then should not have the council and the mayor's office been able to put that initiative into a policy that would pass muster.
The council should have, the mayor's office did not have the authority to do it because it is a council-initiated bill. We told them very, very clearly, the council, that it was a flawed bill. Corporation Council told them that. The state attorney general told them that. Every attorney general every major agency told them it was a flawed bill. It was impossible to be able to actuate an enforcement.
I'm having flashbacks to the OHA discussion. These are very complicated issues, and I know we can't get to all of it right now. We only have a couple minutes left.
But the voice of the people have spoken, and they feel like that voice was not heard. That's what it boils down to.
Let me ask you this. This might be, we don't have much
feel.
time left, and so I just want to make sure we get these last questions in, because I think this is important for everyone. Mrs. Kama, you've never held elected office before. This might be one of the issues you address. Why run now?
Why not run now? The seat was an open seat in Kahului. The person that had occupied this seat was going to run for mayor, and so therefore the seat was vacant. And I said, well, if you're going to run, that would be the perfect time to run. So I decided to do that.
And for you, Mayor Arakawa, you've been in politics for a long time, running again. You served on the council before, and of course, as mayor for quite some time.
My passion for working for the people does not die because I'm getting a little bit older. I've been working in public service all my life. I've made friends throughout Maui County. We've helped people in every district in Maui County, and I want to continue doing that. Now, I bring years and years of experience, and I happen to know how the departments run. I know how the budgeting runs. I know all the little nuances because I've been there a long time. I know who to talk to. Who are the key people that are going to make things happen? You don't just get that just because you sit in the seat. It takes decades of being able to work with people so they trust you. I've built that trust with a lot of the people over time. So I can go to any community and I can point out things that we've done for the people.
Mixed experiences in politics as well as in the community, and fresh voices as well to bring to the table. Thank you, both of you, for joining us tonight. We very much appreciate both of you being here. And thank you to Mayor Alan Arakawa and Natalie Kama. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
By this time next week, the election will be over. So join us as Insights look back on this election season and what's ahead for the politicians who were elected. Until then, I'm Laura Yamada on PBS Hawai'i. Ohui ho.